Hello, everyone, and welcome to a match preview here on the American Scouser TV. Live here from rainy Western Massachusetts. It's Gally and Maka. Maka, how are you doing this morning?
I'm still asleep. I did the morning coffee for the last 3 mornings before I went to work, and you think Saturday's going to be your lie-in day, but Liverpool are playing, so who wants to have a lie-in then? We got to get on it. We're back to the proper football.
Especially after we've waited a good, what feels like a lifetime and a good month here
Yeah, I think
for
I think it was last year, wasn't it? Last year was the last league game.
God, it feels like it. And I'll tell you what, they probably needed the break with the way that they've been playing. But by no means, as a supporter, did I need to wait and stew this long with the idea of how bad it could be if things don't go smooth here. So let's get right at it. In case you are watching us now and living under a rock, Liverpool has a match this morning in about 35 minutes. It's going to be on Peacock. And it's against Brighton Hove Albion, which is, a really interesting side. Maka told me a month ago this was the match coming out. I'd think to myself, man, that's not the team I want. A team in form, punching above their weight, feeling good about themselves, believing in their manager. Scratch that needle on the record. Graham Potter's got his own problems to deal with at Stamford Bridge, and maybe we'll touch on that match a little later. But what do you feel like going into this match before we start talking about the lineups? What is your overall sense coming out of the international break?
Well, we talked about this in the Thursday night podcast, and what we were wondering was how different it would be from Graham Potter. I know, Graham Potter. I mean, he is a good coach. Let's not let's not do him down in any sense. Maybe not the right coach for Chelsea, but then again, who is these days? But the new guy coming in, probably a completely different philosophy. We know Potter's problem has always been getting teams to score goals. And I always feel it's easy to say if they only had strikers up front, which is correct. But there's also the coaching aspect. He didn't ever seem to be able to coach goals into his team in the way, say like a Sean Dyche might not be. He's a good coach for what he wants to do, but set pieces have always been his stock and trade. That never seemed to be a Potter thing, I don't think, at least. So it's interesting. We talked about whether we're going to face a Brighton with that new manager smell. They're going to be up for it, new training, new coaches completely, because the entire coaching staff almost have gone to Chelsea now, haven't they, from Brighton? A new approach, or will it be too confusing for them that they've changed so differently? They've got new cues, new triggers to play to, and can we take advantage of that? I think I would rather play them now than play them if Potter was still in charge. I think because at least they would know what they were doing. Today is just a complete up in the air. We don't know what we're going to get. The cards will fall how they may. I'm just glad we're playing at home. If it was at Brighton, it might have been a different story. But yeah, I think we might see maybe a more attacking Brighton, so not as defensively solid as they had been under Potter, which might suit us right down to the ground for what we need right now.
Yeah, and in a moment we're going to take a look at the lineup, and I'm going to ask your opinion on that. Give you mine here real quick. I agree with you completely regarding I'd rather this Brighton in this moment. Big part of that is the fact Alan M says, "Good morning, guys," and Alan's watching us on YouTube, and we thank Alan for joining us this morning. Keep your comments coming in. And obviously, we also appreciate you coming through YouTube. For those that don't know, we are up and running with a YouTube channel, and it's under American Scouser. We would love for you to go over there, give it a subscribe, and you'll get all of these great contents as well. So I was just getting into the Brighton piece. I think that this coach, if you look at what little style you can see, he's an attack-minded front forward coach. It's not a Graham Potter style. So I think defensively they could be at it today. I also think they're going to try to come out at us, which could allow for us to actually set up and do something we haven't done in a while, which is play teams on the counter a little bit. Which I think would really bode well for both getting Mo involved, as well as maybe why we see the lineup that we see. Because I'll be admitting it was a little bit of a surprise to me. to see that front three. But let's get there in a moment. I think we knew the back would be the back based on the injury to Robo. So let's start in the midfield. Is this Jurgen going with his most tried and trusted because they're not going to be any healthier or rested coming out of an international break? Or is this hard on young Harvey Elliott for the run of form he's had to be dropped from the starting lineup?
As Grandpa Simpson says, a little from column A and a little from column B. Almost, I think it is harsh on Elliott.
You're welcome.
I think it is harsh on Elliott because he's been doing well, but he's also young, so maybe he's just being managed. Maybe they saw something in training, and they don't want to exacerbate something. And Henderson is the club captain, so if he's fit and ready, he really is in contention to play. At least in the Actually, I was going to say at least in the non-big games, but he should be in the big games as well. He's a big game player. My only thinking about it is that, you know, he is at the stage where he's breaking down a lot more frequently than he used to. So are we going to see Henderson for 2 or 3 games and then he's out for another 4 or 5 after that, when we could have had Harvey Elliott, you know, and use Henderson as a sub? On the other hand, that Klopp could be thinking what we were just talking about. What Brighton team are we going to get? Maybe it's sensible to have the experience in there in the middle and then see how it goes. And then if we need that little bit of extra inspiration, we throw Harvey on, we throw Diaz on, and you know, change the game from there. I'm not unhappy with the lineup at all. Maybe we haven't gotten to it yet, but maybe in the front three, a little surprise, but a pleasant one. But overall, I think that midfield is just experience and, you know, getting the job done so that we can get going again.
MH on YouTube says Brighton have scored 14 goals in 7 games this season. Why are people still saying they can't score? I don't think anyone's saying they can't score. I think what we are saying is that they've had a massive shift in their entire tactics, setup, and preparation, and it's all coinciding with them losing the entire coaching staff. So I think that the idea that they have struggled at times, especially on the road, to score against the bigger sides can't be overlooked. They got 2 goals that were both gifts against United. They've scored, I think, 4 penalties. So even though they're you know, sprinkling in lots of goals, I don't think that this is a side that if you put in 2 or 3 that you're going to have to worry about getting into a dogfight with. I think today is a day where you have to go for the first goal. I think getting the first goal in this match at home, keeping the supporters behind you, not letting it get nervy at any point, I think would be really, really important. So let's step up to that front three. I'm assuming that the surprise is young Carvalho in the starting lineup. So when you first saw it, what was the initial thought that went through your mind?
Is Diaz injured? That was literally my first thought, because he's doing so well. He's also on a run of form like Elliott. But at the same time, Carvalho, when he has come on, has been a real bright spark almost every time. Like I love watching him play. He's kind of like Sterling without the attitude. Like, there's no arrogance about him, but he's wiry, he's fast, he's got the control. So I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'd like to see what he can do from the start. But we talked about on Thursday about how Klopp was talking about reinventing things and, you know, revisiting how things are done during the break, because we've been so sluggish up front. At times with Salah, and maybe getting Salah more involved in the game. So is this an indication of a lot more mobility? You know, maybe Salah's not going to be stuck out on the wing today. Maybe him, Firmino, or Carvalho are just going to move wherever they want to move, which I think is the best way to play them. To play Salah, I mean, just, you know, don't give him a position. Just let him play where he needs to play. We know Firmino will drop out to look for the ball, and maybe Carvalho's job is to also float around Salah and create kind of chaos there. It looks to me, when we get to it, looks to me like Brighton are playing a back 3. So that would be perfect. It's almost 1v1, v1, v1, and then let's just mess up that plan with movement. Having said that, we could be 10 minutes into the game and Salah is stuck out on the wing like an old skill winger, and then we're in trouble. But I really like to see the idea of Carvalho and what he can do from the start.
So David Cosgrove chimes in through Facebook and says, 4-2-3-1, Fabinho, Thiago, then Henderson on the right, more to protect Trent a little, Salah down the middle. We talked about this on Monday night. We did not see this starting lineup by any means, but we did talk about either the shift to the 4-2-3-1 or even just playing Salah through the center and even playing Diaz or Jota out on the right purely to shake things up and try to get him going. I think David could be onto something maybe after a substitution is made. I don't know that this lineup screams 4-2-3-1, even though Henderson could just kind of play a little deeper as the reserve of that right wing position. But I think more what I think you'll see here is the traditional 4-3-3 with lots of movement, and you basically have three interchangeable parts in Carvalho, Salah, and Firmino. And I think this is a little bit, and I'm not trying to call Carvalho Mane by any points, but I think this is a little bit of Klopp maybe going back to, we're going to come out firing with the 4-3-3. We're going to play it the way that we play it, and we're going to go back to what made us great. And even just to remind the players and get their own confidence levels up. So let's take a look at Brighton and how they're setting up. Obviously, at the back, it's Webster and Dunk. It looks to me like they could be playing a back three as well with Veltman. And then you'd assume the wingbacks, obviously, Estupiñán and, March. And that's very attacking by them then, with Gross, McAllister, Welbeck, and Caicedo just being the only real holding midfielder in there. This feels like a side that's setting up to come for a shootout.
It feels almost feels like a side that's coming out with the manager wanting to make his mark, to say, this is how we're going to play, this is my style. Because a lot of managers will come in to new clubs and then maybe slowly change things, not try to shock the players too much. But that usually happens because they have at least half of the coaching staff from the previous regime there to help with. They literally just came in and had to do the job from scratch with the only people he knew, which was his own coaches. So I think it's a bit about, this is my style. We're going to come out all guns for him from the start, come hell or high water. But I think it suits us down to the ground. It's far too attacking, I think, to be playing a wounded animal Liverpool team that are looking to get back on track.
Yeah, so where do you see it starting from as far as the tactics go? Do you think we come out guns blazing, try to get the Anfield crowd up, score one early? Do you see them playing a little bit more reserved to make sure that they kind of settle in coming back from the international break? Where do you fall on the, we always look like trash after every international break?
I think we're going to come out we're going to come out and hit them hard. I think we're going to play the way, as I said, go back to what we were good at in the classic Klopp Liverpool style. Now that's not to say it's going to work. That's not to say we're not going to concede the first goal again, because we do always come out of the international break like we've just woken up. But I think that there is a revision going on in the coaching staff. I think they really are looking at things and going, this is what we used to get right. This is what hasn't gone so right. So let's just go back to basics, go back to the fundamentals, and then see where we go from there. So I imagine we're going to see gegenpressing the way we're used to seeing gegenpressing. However, after about 10 minutes, if it's not working, I think we'll see us going back into our shell, which is kind of a problem a lot of the time.
Jamie's chimed in with, get the gins out, Maka.
It's the weekend. It's and I'm going to the in-laws. I have to be on my best behavior.
Well, therefore, I mean, you are going to the
vodka.
in-laws.
Now it's vodka.
I was going to say, right, now it says we just take it down a level to vodka. Monday through Friday, the gin is just to get through work. I mean, church.
Yeah, just get through work.
No, in all seriousness, I think that there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of excitement around today. Obviously, we've had, the last two league fixtures postponed due to the Queen's passing and the security in London not being there. We've had the Champions League match, which, it left really great because Joel hits that header in the 89th minute. But could you imagine what these last 2 weeks would have been like if that was another draw or another letdown and we hadn't had that to build on? So I think there's a lot of excitement around today. And I think that there is some real energy. And, I think this is a great point here. Trent hopefully will be man of the match today. I just need Trent to show today that he's fully engaged, and not that he hasn't been, but I want him to be on it mentally. I want him to be creative going forward and really look like he's enjoying his football. It's been a tough couple of weeks for him. He's the only world-class player that seems like he goes away to international duty and comes back with less confidence than he left. Like, he's the best player at his position in the world, and he comes back doubting his own beliefs. And, good on Jurgen yesterday in the press conference to say, like, I'll only devote a little time to this because honestly, if you get me going, I'll never stop. When asked what his opinion is on Southgate's treatment of Trent, forget whether he should be playing. How do you feel it affects him as a player? And is this something he needs to work on in his game if mentally he can get taken off the boil like this?
I think it definitely is something that all soccer players, at least in English soccer, should be doing, like getting involved in the sports psychology. It still seems to be a taboo subject. That managers are somehow, like, managers that have left school at 16 years old and spent their lives kicking a ball are somehow expert psychologists who can solve these problems. We thankfully know Klopp isn't one of those thinkers. He understands that you need to get those small margin gains, even if it means bringing in people from outside the club to help. However, I do believe there's no better manager for a player like Trent to be going back to from his international exploits than Jurgen Klopp, because he's probably spent the entire week or whatever amount of time it's been telling Trent he's the best fullback in the world and he's going to play like the best fullback in the world and he's going to have the best game he's ever had. Regardless of whether he does or not, he's probably going to go out into that pitch ready to go. We talked about this on Thursday night, though. I think there comes a point, even for a young player who seemingly doubts himself sometimes, where they say, that manager is wrong. I'm going to show him what he's missing out on. And that's what kind of we're hoping we get. We can get that reaction from Trent where he comes onto the pitch today and he plays exactly like he's used to playing, the attacking fullback position, and says, up yours, Gareth. You're a clueless fullback or a clueless defender when you played. Here's what quality looks like. So I hope he does seek some sort of mental support around that. That's not just the manager and the coaches, like a professional support. But at the same time, I think he's got the best manager in the world to help him get through that as well.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. So, bringing back the lineup here, once again, clearly some surprises up top, very fluent. I think gives you the ability to make different substitutions, change the tactics if you had to, with even the players on the pitch. Talk a little bit here before we look at maybe a couple of the other matches to highlight for the folks viewing today. How about the bench in this? What are your thoughts here? As at times our bench has been pretty soft. I feel like this bench really gives you a lot from Steele and players like Milner and Gomez if you need it to. And then you really then have the flair and stability in a guy like Elliott, Jota, Diaz, Nunez, starting to really see the depth of this side as slowly players start to come back to fitness.
I think, first of all, looking at the bench, we probably should have signed the cartoon Arthur rather than Arthur Milo by the sounds of things. That would have been much more productive. But if you take Arthur and Phillips out, not to be bad on Phillips or anything about, but if you take Arthur and Phillips out, not Arthur and Phillips out, take Adrian and Phillips out and put in Kelleher and Konate. Actually, take Arthur out and put Ramsey in. That's a fantastic bench. That's like a quality side. That's a strong side, and you can see options for whatever we need to do. It's a bench you can trust. I think that possibly I'd say the strongest bench we put on this season. So I'm kind of really hopeful about it, that whatever the game throws up against us, Klopp will have solutions on the bench. Whether he uses them or not is a different question. But I think that the answers to any of the questions are there.
We've been through that long and hard on Mondays, Thursdays, Tuesday mornings, Wednesday mornings, coffees. It doesn't matter which guest is co-hosting or if someone's doing a show alone. We question whether or not Jurgen Klopp will use the substitutes, and we're always wrong. because we always say he will at some point, he has to, and he still doesn't. So it'll be interesting to see. And the idea that you could still add in, if they were ever healthy and fit and available, Jones or Keita to this mix as well, you really start to see some of the level of depth. I think in Diaz's case, it was purely the minutes and the travel. And if you know who's really upset right now, looking at this right now, is probably Rangers, because they know that they're going to get 3 guys who all thought they were going to start today. In Jota, Diaz, and Darwin. And they're probably going to get 2 out of 3 of them from the beginning, and the other one at like the 45-minute mark, because we do play in just 3 days. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, we talked a lot here about the Liverpool-Brighton match. Here are the other matches still to come in this match week. Which of these, outside of the major derby, of course, between City and United, which of these, if you could watch one of these matches, Maka, would you tune in on, and why?
Leicester and Nottingham Forest. First of all, because as much as I bash Brendan Rodgers, and I'm not bashing him now, I'm actually quite a fan of his coaching style. I think he's a good technical coach, maybe a great tactician, and certainly by the sounds of things, not a good man-manager. But it's interesting to see. I was talking to Jamie about this on the Thursday podcast. The Leicester fans are some of the most delusional fans I've ever come across on Twitter and Facebook, just kind of finding out what the thoughts and things are. They literally think they're a top 4 club just because they won that one not lucky, but 5,000 to 1 shot, never to be repeated league title. They're now in the big boys club, but they're not. They have an aging team. They have no talent, and they've bought no players of any consequence this season, and they expect miracles. But it's a derby for them. It's a local derby for as much as they can have one, and it's essentially, I think, Rodgers' kind of high noon moment. If he comes through, he gets to keep his job. If he doesn't, he's probably out the door. So for that alone, I think it's just going to be an interesting game, to see, do the players want them there? Are they going to fight for everything? Has Brendan used the 2 weeks to fix the things that keep going wrong, which is the defending side, which we know he's not very good at in the first place? And then how many players are going to be sitting outside of the bench for Nottingham Forest out of their 507 players that they've purchased during the summer transfer window? So I think there's all sorts of interest going into that game. Leeds Villa, that'll be another one to look at, because Gerrard is also under pressure. But that Monday game is it's certainly the one that has the most bite to it for me.
I definitely think the Leicester match has the most drama and storylines behind it. I'd say if there was one match on here that I would be staying away from, I think it would be Southampton-Everton. That match just has 0-0 written all over it. So does West Ham Wolves, to be honest. Both teams just are absolutely dreadful to watch. And then, obviously, coming up here in a few minutes, we have the Liverpool match, so we're very excited for that. So last thoughts here before we jump off, Maka. What is your prediction and result?
On Thursday, I said we would win 2-0. We'd keep our first clean sheet. Maybe not necessarily tidily, but maybe a few hairy scares there. But we'll keep the first clean sheet. Not keep the first clean sheet, but we'll keep a clean sheet. We'll score 2. It'll be relatively comfortable. Having looked at the lineups now, I actually might say 3-0, because I really think Carvalho is going to want to impress. The biggest prediction for me is that people are going to watch this and they're going to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's my biggest prediction.
All right. Well, appreciate that plug out here. So for all of you watching, thank you for jumping on this morning. Maka, thanks for getting up out of bed and at least putting on a shirt. Please go to the YouTube page, subscribe, leave us comments, like and share. Introduce your friends. We do a fantasy show. We do pre-match and post-match. We have a morning coffee or tea segment each and every day for about a half hour, talking about the day's news across the whole footballing world, but specifically, of course, to our Liverpool Reds. So up the Reds. We'll see about doing a post-match show today after the match. Get a few of us back on here. Hope to see some of you in the comments, and enjoy the match, everyone. Have a great day.